The final day of school at Greendale High had arrived. Seniors were filled with excitement, buzzing about graduation, and savoring their last moments before entering the real world. Laughter echoed through the hallways, teachers turned a blind eye to the chaos, and even the usual air of authority seemed to be lifted. Everyone was ready for summer, for freedom. But for Sarah, Ben, Kelly, and Mark, there was unfinished business. As the day dragged on, Sarah felt the weight of anticipation in her chest. They had been planning this for weeks, months, even, talking in hushed whispers about the basement. The abandoned basement of Greendale High was the subject of rumors for decades. According to the stories, it had once been a part of the original building, but a tragic accident had caused the school to seal it off. No one was supposed to go down there anymore, but the seniors knew better. They'd heard about it from older students, about secret dares and unsolved mysteries. Mark, always the bold one, had managed to swipe a key from the janitor's office the week before. "It's just one last adventure," he had said with a grin. "We have to do it. It's tradition." Sarah, always more cautious, had her doubts. The stories gave her chills. A girl had supposedly disappeared down there 20 years ago, never found. Some said she'd been locked in by accident. Others whispered that something far worse had taken her. The teachers would always shut down any questions about it, claiming it was a hazard due to old pipes and dangerous construction. But Sarah wasn't so sure. Despite her misgivings, she had agreed to go. It was, after all, their last day in this school. What harm could one final adventure do? The last bell rang at 3:00 p.m. sharp, signaling the official end of the school year. Students rushed out of the building, eager to start their summer, but the four friends lingered in the hallway near the gym. Mark, Ben, and Kelly were already waiting for her, a mix of excitement and nerves playing on their faces. "You ready?" Mark asked, twirling the stolen key in his hand. Sarah took a deep breath and nodded. "Yeah, let's just get it over with." The basement door was in a secluded area of the school, down a narrow corridor behind the old gym. Most students never went near it, it was easy to forget it even existed. The door itself was old, made of thick wood, with rusted hinges and a padlock that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Mark knelt down, inserting the key, and with a heavy click, the lock fell away. They stared at the door for a moment, none of them willing to be the first to open it. Kelly finally broke the silence. "Well, we're not gonna chicken out now, are we?" Mark pushed the door open, revealing a dark staircase that descended into pitch blackness. A musty, damp smell wafted up, and the air inside was colder than it should have been. Sarah shivered, but she followed the others as they cautiously stepped inside, their footsteps echoing off the narrow walls. Ben turned on his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. The stairs creaked ominously as they made their way down, the wooden steps groaning under their weight. "This place is ancient," Kelly muttered, wrinkling her nose at the smell. "No wonder they locked it up." At the bottom of the stairs, they found themselves in a long, narrow hallway lined with old doors. The walls were made of stone, and everything was coated in dust. A low hum seemed to vibrate through the air, making Sarah's skin prickle. Mark shined his flashlight on the nearest door. "Look at this," he said, his voice hushed. "It's like no one's been down here in decades." "Creepy," Ben whispered. They wandered deeper into the basement, the corridor stretching farther than they had expected. Sarah kept glancing behind her, the sense of unease growing with each step. Something didn't feel right, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Finally, they reached a large, iron door at the end of the hall. Unlike the others, this one was bolted shut with several heavy locks. Mark frowned. "I wonder what's behind here." "Probably nothing good," Sarah murmured. Mark tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. "Locked," he said, frustrated. "I guess that's it." Just as they were about to turn back, they heard it. A faint, scratching sound coming from the other side of the door. They froze. "Did you hear that?" Ben asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah's heart raced. "Let's go. I don't like this." Mark's hand lingered on the door for a moment, but then, slowly, the scratching stopped. The silence that followed was oppressive, thick like a blanket that muffled their breath. Without warning, the lights flickered and went out completely, plunging them into total darkness. "Mark, Ben, Kelly?" Sarah's voice trembled as she fumbled for her phone, trying to use it as a flashlight. But it wouldn't turn on. None of their phones worked. The air around them grew colder, and the scratching started again, louder this time, more frantic. Then, from the darkness, a low, rasping voice echoed down the hall. "You shouldn't have come here." Quote. Kelly screamed, and the group turned to run, but the hallway they had come down seemed to stretch endlessly in front of them. No matter how far they ran, they couldn't find the stairs. The walls shifted, bending and twisting in impossible ways. Suddenly, a door slammed shut behind them. Then another. The sound reverberated through the hall, trapping them in a labyrinth of old, decaying rooms. "I don't understand," Mark panted, panic clear in his voice. "The stairs were right here. Where are they? I told you we shouldn't have come down here," Sarah yelled, her voice cracking with fear. They stopped in front of a room where a dim light flickered inside. Ben hesitated but pushed the door open. Inside was an old classroom, untouched for years. Desks were scattered, the chalkboard covered in thick dust. But there, written in large, smeared letters, was a single word: "Leave." Before anyone could react, the door slammed shut behind them with a deafening bang. Sarah turned, her pulse pounding in her ears. The scratching had returned, this time louder, closer. It seemed to be coming from the walls themselves, like something was trying to claw its way through. The figure appeared then, just beyond the flickering light. A shadow, tall and thin, with hollow eyes that glowed faintly in the darkness. It stood at the edge of the room, watching them. Ben's breath caught in his throat. Who are you?" Quote. The figure didn't move, but its voice came again, cold and chilling. "You don't belong here. It won't let you leave." Quote. Mark ran to the door and pulled on the handle, but it wouldn't open. "We have to get out of here," he yelled, banging on the door. But it was no use. The room seemed to close in on them, the walls breathing, pulsing with some dark, malevolent energy. Suddenly, the lights went out again. And in the darkness, the voice whispered one final time, "You'll never leave." Quote. The next morning, the janitor found the basement door padlocked shut, as it always had been. The hallway behind the gym was silent, untouched. There was no sign of Sarah, Ben, Kelly, or Mark. They had vanished, leaving behind only their abandoned backpacks in the empty school hallways. Years later, the story of the 4 missing students became another ghost story, whispered by seniors daring each other to venture into the basement. But no one ever did. Because everyone knew. Once you went down there, you never came back.